to give a quick overview of Stackhouse, and then we'll pass it back to me and I'll introduce the panelists. So again, welcome. Janelle, it's over to you.
Thank you, Zach. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Ryan and I started Stackhouse back in 2017 as a way to solve the affordable housing crisis. And so over the years, we have brought on team members, all local to Tucson. And what you're looking at on your screen right now is the work of our architect, Randy Jacob. This is the site of the first ever Stackhouse vertical community. We'll be building at 941 North Stone Avenue here in Tucson. We are 50% reserved, all owner occupied. We are very excited to add a new entry point into the home ownership market. I've scrolled down just a bit. You can see some pictures of the container homes done by our manufacturer. All of our units start at $45,000. You can pick your floor plan, the paint colors, all of those details are left up to you. We have 3 floor plans right now, but if you want to get creative, we can do a custom home. And we've been working with local attorneys to build a patent portfolio that protects this concept. So we actually pull the shipping container into the center of the building. We have a lift mechanism up at the top that lifts the container home into the building. We've got parking on the first floor. We'll actually have the first car stackers here in Tucson. We have space for 49 container homes. We are so lucky to be building this business in this community and to have such great leaders who have joined us for a conversation on the future of housing and how we solve big problems through community partnerships. So that's a bit about Stackhouse. I'm Dr. Janelle Briggs, and this is my partner, Ryan Egan, born and raised here in Tucson. Want to say a bit about yourself?
I'm Ryan Egan. I was born and raised in Tucson. I went to Tucson High. I tried to move away, went to San Diego for a couple of years, but this city just pulled me back. I love the people here so much, and I really looking forward to helping to contribute to Tucson going forward.
Yep. Thanks, Zach. Let's meet the folks who are going to be speaking with us tonight.
All right, perfect. Sounds good. The only quick rule of the road here, and I get to have dictatorial power if you don't. It's my one fun pleasure on Zoom calls is the mute button. But it looks like everybody is muted after, 5 months? We're used to this by now. So if you can go ahead and mute yourself when you're not speaking throughout the next few minutes, that would just cut down on feedback. That's pretty much the only rule of the road. I and Marissa will be monitoring the chat feature as well. And so if you're not on the panel and you have questions or thoughts or want to kind of put your hat in the ring for our final part of this hour, please do that in the chat. And Marissa and I will tag team to get to as many of those as we can. But 5 panelists, 2 hot seats. We've met the 2 folks in the hot seat, Janelle Briggs and Ryan Egan. Let's meet the 5 panelists who will be asking the questions to the hot seats. Let's start with Ashley Larussa. We'll do about a 30 to 45 second intro if you can, just to keep it on time. And Ashley, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Larussa, founder and owner of Rue Events. We work with nonprofit organizations and community leaders that focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and really excited about being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Next on my list is T. Van Hook.
There we go. Thank you. I'm T. Van Hook. I'm the CEO of Habitat for Humanity Tucson. I've spent most of my career working in equity issues, and I'm a 5th of 7, which means I'm the 5th of 7 generations of Arizonans.
Amazing. Dre Thompson. I've finally gotten used to that, Dre. Dre Thompson.
Yep. Hey, I'm Dre Thompson. I'm the Executive Vice President of Startup Tucson. And so Startup Tucson, if you don't know, is a nonprofit that supports entrepreneurs. I came into this space about 2 years ago, and Janelle was one of the first entrepreneurs that I met at Startup Coffee, and she was telling me about this amazing idea. So I've been so honored to kind of see her and like the whole Stackhouse develop from beginning. And so this is so amazing to have just kind of seeing your whole process. So I'm really excited to be here today.
Thanks, Dre. Eric Smith.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the University of Arizona Center for Innovation. We are a University of Arizona startup incubator network. We serve scalable science and tech ventures that come from the university through tech transfer, graduates, or from the community as well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Eric. And last but not least, Aaron Eden.
Gotta find my mute button. Mouse ran away on me. Hey guys, Aaron Eden. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Community Investment Corporation. We're a local nonprofit that do a lot of things, but the thing that's probably most relevant for all of you is help entrepreneurs with getting access to capital in the early stages before angels and banks and other folks are comfortable playing. So super excited to be with you tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks again to these 5 community leaders who are here to discuss the future of housing in our region, and each have come with some pointed questions for Janelle and Ryan about the looming housing crisis. I think some aspects are here today, and some are around the corner. But Tucson, I think, is poised to write a different story, and Stackhouse is, I think, in a position to be a part of that. And so to kick off our questions, I'm just going to pick on somebody. I'm going to pick on somebody that I have not had the chance to get to know as well, but I hope to after this call, T. Van Hook. We can start with you, T, and put Janelle and Ryan on the hot seat.
Sure. And I'm, of course, going to ask the affordability question, and we've had these conversations before, and it would really help, I think, set the frame if you could talk to us about target customers and how the affordability and movability eventually will lead to affordability for a more mobile generation.
Absolutely, T. That's a great question and a wonderful place to start. Before I answer, is the chat function working for everyone? This is the first time I've ran a Zoom. So, okay, just wanted to make sure that I had set that up correctly. I'm going to share my screen again and show you the breakdown of our target customers. So we have 2 target markets here in Tucson. The first is what we're affectionately calling downsizing baby boomers. So folks who have had a traditional work experience, that traditional American dream that so many generations before us were able to live and experience, they are coming into their retirement years. And so they generally have a home, but they want to know that they can see all of their expenses laid out so that the money that they have will last them for their foreseeable futures. And so on the screen right now, you can see our customer experience price point comparison. So we have 2 kind of target customers. The first is someone who would have to finance their container home. So they start at $45,000, and it's like buying a car or a boat. So 5 to 7 year term, 4 to 7% interest. And in this first column here, that payment for the container home would be $891 a month. And so that's assuming a 5-year term and a 7% interest. So the worst terms that you could get. This person we're putting on the first floor of a Stackhouse community, so $650 a month. So that comes out to $1,541 a month to live in a Stackhouse community. What you have to remember though is that after 5 years, that container home price goes away. You now own that home free and clear, it's yours. And so if you scoot on over, the newest apartment that was just built here in Tucson is 2 East Congress. They're over $1,000 a month in rent. You haven't paid utilities or parking. And so when you look at comparing us to apartments and even condos, the price may seem like some sticker shock, but you have to think about what you're buying and how long it will last you. You want to continue?
Yeah, I think that there has been sort of a separation in the real estate world between affordable units, which are built as inexpensively as possible and generally government subsidized, and market rate housing where the developer tries to maximize their profit out of that development. And Stackhouse is trying to do something different with both. We're trying to do a market rate development where we don't have any sort of like government subsidies as far as Section 8 credit assistance or long-term federal funding, and offer it at a rate that is below what a traditional real estate developer would offer it at. So we are not affordable housing like a La Frontera or a Habitat for Humanity, but we are an affordable alternative to a traditional market rate development. And right now that doesn't really exist. Basically every developer always wants to get every penny out of every development.
And so we're taking the opposite approach where you design the house that works for you. The base price is $45,000. If you want travertine tile, you want a fancy stove, we can source that for you. Your price will go up from there. But our goal as a company was to be able to offer an attainable home ownership option to anyone in any major city.
Janelle, I love that. And I think what would be great is to get all of our panelists in at least once and maybe circle around. So T, I will probably be back. But I noticed that the Buena Vista apartment was starting to climb towards $5,000 a month. Dre Thompson and I get to do a lot around young professionals, but Dre also represents entrepreneurs. And one of the things about Tucson has been if we can maintain affordability, then we have a greater opportunity to start and launch folks. Now, I don't know what Dre's question is any more than you do, Janelle and Ryan, but that was my segue. Dre Thompson, can you ask your first question?
Great segue. Yeah, I was tasked to sort of talk about some of the more startup aspects of this. Something that's very interesting to me that I've seen sort of iteration over some of your different drawings. I'd love to know, so I'm going to kind of do a two-parter and you can kind of pick which one. So I'd love to hear about kind of the evolution of your idea from now until, when you first had it, the very first day, kind of what major pivot points. And then I just want to like sneak under this. If you can talk a little bit about the innovative technology that you've been integrating it, you've getting some patents, and I'm so curious about any statements that you have about what is the intersection of technology and housing, and is that kind of good for affordability in the future? What can we anticipate about smart homes and the ways that you've been thinking about technology? So they're totally disparate questions, but I'm like squishing them together. So good luck with that. But there's two of you, so.
I think I'd like to handle the second question first. I think that technology is kind of right now a siren in housing in the old form, in that it's something that's very seductive because it's so easy, but it doesn't effectively solve the issues. I sound like a broken record, but I say all the time that there is not a ones and zeros solution to housing, specifically because all of the software solutions for housing are designed to maximize profits for the landlord, not for a homeowner, not for a renter, not for any other party. And so all of those technologies, even the ones to save power, are adapted to a landlord view so that they can penalize the tenant long term. So I don't see those as a solution to housing. I see them as a solution to cost for the current owners of rental housing.
And I think I can do a good tie-in back to the evolution of the idea. One of the questions we're starting to get a lot is, well, how smart are your homes? What's the tech? And I'm like, people need places to live. And so in a very real sense, we are nuts and bolts housing. Like anyone can add tech to a home. But if you read any Crunchbase article that talks about real estate, every VC who's in real estate, prop tech, their goal is to increase rental income for the folks who own these buildings, own these developments. That's the trajectory of almost everyone else. And so the evolution for Stackhouse has almost been non-existent. Like, we've stuck to the same idea. Our very first investor, Adam Summers, is on this call, and we would have been a rental option if we had taken, you know, kind of the route that presented itself at the time. But our goal is to be an attainable home ownership solution where you buy one home for the same price as an SUV, and you can move that home to any city around the country and eventually around the world. And so I think what has changed for us is that our connections to Tucson has become ever deeper. I think when we started, it was, we're in Tucson, so this is where we're starting our business, but now we are anchoring it here. We are honored that T. Van Hook is on this call with us, and the conversations that we're in with her are also in connection with Pima Community College. So they, as I'm sure you're aware, are growing their trades program. They're building a brand new facility, and we're in conversations with them about adding manufactured housing as a trades line so that we can bring the manufacturing of our container homes to Tucson. So not only are we building the first location here, we want to add jobs. We want to build the entire infrastructure of the Stackhouse business here. Our architect, Randy Jacob, was trained at the University of Arizona, as was our CFO, Crystal Royce. Marissa Dominguez was also educated here. Tucson has a history of not only being a great place to live, but of producing people who can do great things. And so as we have grown over the last 3.5 years, we've been very grateful that Tucson has met every need that we have had.
Yeah, and unfortunately for myself, I am not good at computers at all. So all of our patents are related to the physical space. So I built a foam board model, drew it all out, drew engineering documents, and then submitted them to our attorney. So all of our patents protect the physical container, the utility connections between the building and the container, and the mechanism by which we load the house into the building without having to disturb any of the other residents. So they're all mechanical patents.
Oh my gosh, that makes me want to have like a whole different conversation about what counts as tech, because I feel like all those, you're not even giving yourself credit. Like, I love the integration of the elevators and the ways that you're addressing the physical space. Because like people, that's going to be question number one, like cars. What am I going to do with my car? And the fact that you're already thoughtfully thinking about solutions. So I would definitely count those solutions that you hashed out on a napkin or on foam or however, and created these engineering pieces. I felt from the beginning, I've been super interested and curious in the integration of those engineering pieces that solve some serious problems with downtown living. So I feel like you didn't give enough credit on that, but.
Really interesting that you say that, Dre, because most VCs that we have met with do not consider us a tech startup. We are a development builder startup. And so every VC that we have pitched says we don't deploy our capital in the built environment because we need $4 million before we can acquire one customer. And so while yes, we do have tech, it's not an app. It's not ones and zeros. And that's what prop tech as a VC vertical is. It's apps that make housing more profitable. It's not getting folks into places to actually live.
I see Ashley Larussa really resonating with a number of the things that that both Janelle and Ryan answered on that last question. I want to get Ashley in on this. Ashley, let's keep them in the hot seat.
Yes, well, know that it's hot from our love. It's being warmed because we love you both so much, and really repping Tucson, Arizona. Knowing the two of you and your backgrounds, being in real estate for Ryan, and feminism and systemic issues and injustices, and Dr. Janelle's background, I want to ask what that plays in with location and the thought behind, especially looking at our history here in America with redlining and zoning issues and accessibility. So what was the thought process that for Stackhouse?
That is an issue that's very important to me personally, I grew up across from Park Mall, but I was DSEG bused to Utterback and then was able to get to Tucson High through the Magnet Arts program. And I benefited from the diversity of all of those schools, I think, more than what I learned in the classroom. And so it's very difficult being a developer who's trying to build more housing without destroying the neighborhoods in which we're building. And so one of the things we did was we designed a flexible building platform. So the structure itself can have many different exterior finishes so that it can fit into each neighborhood, but we're also creating opportunities to purchase real estate at a price point that almost anyone can enter and then trade to someone else at a profit. When the ozone legislation was passed, I couldn't help feel like it was a starting gate shot for every real estate developer in the country. I'm sure wouldn't surprise you to know that a lot of the largest ozone developers started their funds like 6 months before the legislation was actually passed, and a lot of those funds were deployed. And so in areas where developers might not have been able to or profitably transition a neighborhood, now they are. And so we feel like we're in a race to capture as much of that real estate as we can and deliver it to our customers instead of the luxury developers who are going to come through and develop it later.
Yeah, and I think Ryan and I actually had a conversation about redlining earlier today. We were doing research for this panel, and I had sent him just a bunch of articles that everything that I had seen in the last couple of weeks on housing. And they were just all on redlining, as if it's this brand new idea that no one has ever heard of before. And oh my God, this is awful. Well, yes, it is awful. And one of the problems is that the only thing we believe is a house that you should aspire to costs $200,000 to $300,000. That's a problem when you have an entire generation saddled with student loan debt. I am very lucky in that I had scholarships through undergrad and my master's. I only had to take out $20,000 for my Ph.D. and I was able to pay it off. It's a miracle. It is an absolute blessing. But we have to start changing the conversation on what is a home? How are your needs being met? Are you safe? Are you where you need to be? Are you happy? Forget the Joneses. We really need to change the entire conversation on what a home is and where we allow people to feel pride in what they live and that my needs are met, and that is enough. The sustainability question is sticky when you tie in race, because for the Black community, owning things is the way that we show our value because we haven't been able to own. But at the same time, let's offer a different thing to own so that we can do other things with our money, with our energy. Let's do something different because this world isn't working for us necessarily. So let's create new access points.
Yeah. We have an entrenched housing system that 65% of the country currently benefit from, but that is 75% white Americans. And so we get to that 65% at the expense of every non-white American. And so there has to be a diversity in housing, that we have to expand the definition of what it is and not see these things as threats to the existing form of housing. We're always making new people. We need more housing, not a specific type of housing.
Yeah, Janelle and Ryan, Ashley, thank you for that question. And I think where that all went ties into the next person that I want to pick on, so you can pick on Janelle and Ryan. But, I think up until 80 years ago, there was the missing middle of housing was not missing. There was a huge diversity of what a home meant and what it looked like and how it tied into your economic opportunity. And it just seems that middle between single family zoning and housing and then massive multifamily projects. That middle is missing, and the incentives for helping people that look like all of us on this call invest and develop that kind of housing is absolutely missing. And to address, maybe not address that, but to segue out of that, I feel like Aaron Eden, the Chief Innovation Officer for the Community Investment Corporation, there was one question just before this one, Aaron, about technology, which is a world you've lived very much in. And now you are a part of a nonprofit organization that seeks to bring innovation and incentives to innovate that broken model that I just talked about. Again, I don't know what you're going to ask, but it felt like a great segue to kind of the worlds you're straddling. And so, Aaron, I want to go to you for the next hot seat question.
I love your soft curveballs. That's nice.
I've never heard of a soft curveball, so
yeah, a softball and a curveball at the same time. You don't know which way to go. Yeah, so I'm actually in the thick of trying to design a system to distribute millions of dollars out to nearly tens of thousands of people in Tucson that are on the verge of being homeless, like now. And as a result of it, I'm going super deep into a lot of areas that are, a lot of this is new to me, around housing and the impact of these things. But really what's tugging at my heartstrings, as I've been deep in this project, is not only the thousands of people in Tucson, but that sort of spans the world, right? There's a lot of people that are on the verge of homelessness right now. Some are calling it a tsunami of homelessness coming. And so I'm curious in sort of the Stackhouse perspective on the world, what sort of impact do you think that you'll be able to have on, I hope to God that doesn't actually happen, but if we've got that many people that are homeless, what can you guys do?
So we are lucky in that from everything our engineering and construction partners have told us, this has never been done before anywhere in the world. So the Stackhouse Tucson location will be the very first. We are anticipating a build time of 3 to 6 months for the tower, and our manufacturing partner currently does 30 to 40 container homes a month. So we have the capability of being a rapid deployment housing solution. Funding will be the issue, as is with solving any global challenge. Where folks put their money determines the solutions we are able to provide. And so we are actively fundraising for Stackhouse. We're raising our equity round right now. We have an offer for land currently under review for property in Denver. It's also in an opportunity zone. That location will allow us to build 8 stories, and we have
at least 100.
At least 100 homes. And so when we start getting to places where the zoning is denser, we can provide a lot of space for folks. But it's going to be a function of time and money. But I think you're right. All of the research, it's really frustrating, I think, to be a startup in the housing space who's fundraising right now, because all of the investors are either putting their money into these apps or they're holding it to buy all of these foreclosed homes and flip them into rentals. So we're really going to see our nation's priorities in terms of housing our citizens very shortly.
Yeah, I wish that we had a more immediate answer, but I think that the free market is going to be a little bit difficult for a little while, and it's easy to get very angry at all of those things, but ultimately there's so many separate individual choices that are being made that there's really nothing that we can do other than offer an alternative and try to come behind that. The people who are planning to foreclose and reposition these properties are only doing so because they anticipate a profit at the other end. If we are able to outbuild them in the next 1.5 to 2 years and they're left with a product with no market, or no customers, then they're going to have to either lower the price or get out of the business entirely. And so that's our strategy to bring housing costs down, is to outcompete them, quite frankly. Because I don't think that there's a regulatory way to do it, because they simply have too much money. They can write a check at that level and make those problems go away. So the only way to beat them is to outcompete them.
And I think what's great is, even though it's a very scary time for everyone, folks rally behind people who commit to doing good work. So we're actually doing an equity crowdfunding raise right now. We had zero traction with traditional investors for all of the reasons we've been discussing. And every day since we have launched, someone has invested in our company. The minimum investment, and this is for equity, so it's not like, we're not a nonprofit, this isn't a donation. The minimum investment is $100, and we have not gone a day since we launched without someone saying, I see your vision and I support you. So we're at $136,000 invested in our company. We need $500,000 to release our construction loans and build the first location. So it's very, very exciting. And I think what's great about it is that most of these people, we don't know. Now, I will say that Tucson has invested tremendously. Many of the people that have invested, we do know and are from our community, but a lot of them are from around the country, even around the world. So the world sees what's happening, and folks are actively looking for solutions and for alternatives. And so I think, to your point, Erin, it's also a very exciting time, because we are starting to realize that while these systems may work in ways that do not benefit us, we can work outside of them and create change within them. We will never be able to tear them down. Like, that's not how systems work, but we can build within, and we can force the system to change and to adapt. Ryan and I went last summer to the Manufactured Housing Conference for the state of Arizona to try and pitch them to build our units. We wanted to work with someone in our state. The CEO of one of the largest builders in the country turned around mid-pitch and just walked away from us. He said, I'm not interested, and walked away. He left his poor wife standing next to us at this mixer. He just walked away. They, as an industry, are trying to have FHA raise lending rates on manufactured housing to 200 to 400 so they can compete with traditional stick-built homes. As an industry, the manufactured housing industry is not interested in lowering the price point for folks who need to buy homes. So
he specifically said we have 2 years of back orders for our existing product. We're not innovating. So the housing crisis is not a crisis if you build housing. And that's something that takes a bit to understand, is that in a lot of other businesses, people continue to manufacture a thing and they compete on price. In real estate, if prices get too low, they just stop building and they wait for demand to rise so much that they can build the same thing they've always built at a profit. So there's no incentive to innovate in housing at all. It's run kind of like OPEC, where they just withhold product until demand is high enough that they deign to produce it.
And then they're building luxury condos that sit empty because that's what will pull them in the most dollar. It's a whole system. And this is all new to me. So I knew nothing about real estate until I met Ryan in 2016. But it is an entire world. But let's get back to the conversation. We could go all day.
This is so good. Janelle, Ryan, I think, you know, my hope and maybe concern as a sub call to action to everyone on this call is that I don't think Tucson is ready to have the conversation about housing that needs to be had. The conversation we have to have around housing is a conversation that Tucson has not had well for many, many decades around supply, demand, and appropriate level of growth. And so I think there's going to have to be some pressure on the system from some of the creative minds on this call to help cast a better vision and to push through some of the pushback I was thoroughly inspired, Janelle. I've talked to you so much about this, and I don't recall hearing that pointed specific call to action that you just gave. And we share a passion for housing, the three of us, and so I'm right there with you. But I think you also defined innovation a couple of different ways, and you mentioned that word. The only guy left we haven't heard from on the panel is Eric Smith, the executive director for the University of Arizona Center for Innovation. So it's almost like we planned this, but we didn't. But Eric, let's get you in on this and see what you have.
Cool, thanks, Zach. So interestingly enough, my first question, one Tucson local to another, was going to be of Ryan, and I was going to ask him what high school he went to. But like a true Tucson local, he included it in his introduction. So, I didn't have anything else, and no, I'm just kidding. So I think
on the list to see if I have something that you know that.
Right. So, and then I was going to follow on questions with, do you know this person or that, or no? So I think it's, safe to say that at the very least, certainly the people on this call here, the backers that you have on WeFunder, and the many supporters in Tucson want Tucson to be your first location. We want to kind of start this evolution, this revolution in the housing market. And I think maybe two things that might hinder that, or at least you probably know the answers to these, but one kind of addresses a question I saw from Yvette Marie, and also was in elements of Dre's. So the first question would be about barriers to entry. And you mentioned that manufactured home builders aren't interested in this. Okay. Traditional realtors are more interested in kind of flipping for rental. Okay. But what's to stop another, Janelle and Ryan from coming in and saying, look, they're solving it. I want a piece of that action. So that's the first question. And then the second question, and I'm so surprised we didn't hear this from our Aaron Eden over here, is, you split your customer segments, the people in the community, up into a couple of different buckets. You mentioned the downsizing baby boomers. Have you gone out and spoken to these folks? For example, with those downsizing baby boomers said, are you willing to do something like this? Or for those that are low income or challenged, can you even afford $1,500 a month? We know that it's a shorter term than a 30-year lease, but can you even afford that? Have you gone out and kind of explored those conversations? So barriers to entry and traditional customer discovery, right? What you got?
Yeah, so customers, I mentioned earlier, so the Tucson location will have spaces for 49 container homes. We are currently over 50% reserved. So those are owner occupied folks that said, I want to live in Stackhouse. And so those folks, generally two different types. So the folks, some are, I would say, more well off and have the financial ability to pay cash for their home. And then some are on fixed income. So one of our customers, his name is Joe, he messages us frequently saying, I'm just following along, making sure you haven't forgotten about me. And his reason for being excited about Stackhouse is because he's on a limited income. And so Stackhouse gives him the ability to foresee all of his housing costs. We do a minimum 5-year lease. So you know exactly what all of your housing costs will be for 5 years. All of your utilities, internet, parking, everything is locked in. And for Joe, at the end of those 5 years, he'll own his container home. And if he's ready to go check out life in Denver or Seattle, we'll have new locations where he can go. And so I think more specifically to the affordability aspect, kind of where T started us off, I want to be very upfront that Stackhouse it costs money. It's not cheap. And there's no other way to get around that right now.
We're not rapid deployment.
Affordability.
Right.
We are rapid deployment home ownership. And so that at this point, unfortunately, does require that you have the capital and credit score to be able to get a loan for $50,000. We are actively pursuing relationships with other nonprofits. We're looking at maybe starting our own so that we can get access to grant money to help get true low-income folks into our developments. That is absolutely important for us. At the same time, we are hemmed in by the capital structure that exists right now, and the only folks who are willing to lend on a container home are our manufacturer and national lenders who do boats and RVs. Those are the options that are available to our customers. And so the more conversations we can have like this, the better, so that more folks know that there's no reason why our customers shouldn't be able to get a 30-year mortgage. It's locked into a building that they can't get out. Like, it's secure, it's a fix. We can move it, but they can't steal it. So all of these things are part of the system that we need to have deep conversations with, because the system only recognizes a house. It doesn't recognize a container home. And that's no fault of ours or our customer, but we have to work within that and start wiggling other solutions in. And so that's our goal, Team Turtle. Slow and steady win.
As far as barriers go, one, we spent 3 years trying to find any developer who would help us, and none of them would. So that would take a while for them to turn around. And second, we have 17 patents to protect how we integrate the containers into the building. The idea of using multiple tiny homes inside of a large structure was patented in the 70s, so anyone can use that. We've focused on the most efficient ways to utilize that technology. So for instance, the homes don't sit on each floor. Instead, there's a hole in the floor plate, and the home sits on the beams in the floor plate. That way you have an ADA compliant threshold from the walkway into the home, and I have to build a lot less floor.
So all of that is in our patent. The other thing, and I saw a little bit of Yvette Marie's question, is that there are tons of companies building modular and small homes. Tons of them, lots of them. You can Google, there are probably hundreds. The problem, or not problem, those companies simply sell a home. They don't give you a place to put it. So most zoning is out in the sticks where no one really wants to live. And so the real magic of Stackhouse is that you can live in a tiny home downtown. That's the secret sauce. And as far as we're aware, we're the only folks who have figured it out and who are willing to stick it out and raise the capital to make this happen.
And anyone who wants to compete, we'd be happy to negotiate a licensing deal at $1 below the profitability of whatever they were going to do.
And there is Ryan's mic drop right there. I am so sorry, Zach. I just have one follow-on question because I'm listening, so closely to the two of you speak. You say container home, tiny home. Are you intentional about using the term home instead of house?
Yes, because it's not a house. It's a home. It doesn't have a picket fence. It doesn't have the indicators of a house. But I have an aunt and uncle who built their own home they built their own geodesic home in the 70s, and it's more of a home than most homes I've been to. So I'm very lucky that I've gotten to visit a lot of different types of housing. I lived in a 250 square foot apartment in San Diego. So I've lived in smaller than a Stackhouse home. The reason we chose containers is because those dimensions are the least expensive to move. You don't have to get any extra waivers or security detail to move it down the freeway. But long-term, we see ourselves as building the infrastructure and then licensing the technology to different home builders. So there might be other manufacturers who have a different twist on how to build our homes, and they might not use a container, but as long as it fits the dimensions, we can have that discussion.
So does that mean there's like potential for like BYO tiny home? Are you able to like be modular enough that at some point any tiny home could fit in?
So Uncle Sam still has to approve the manufacturing process, and it has to be built in a manufacturing center. And Personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting a home that someone built themselves next to a home that someone purchased. Just for insurance reasons. All of our homes also have to have sprinkler system attachments. They're sprinkled in on the interior, and that's something that a lot of people don't incorporate into their tiny houses. So,
kind of in the flow of Eric and Dre kind of asking a follow-up question, I think we have time for one more of the panel to jump in and maybe do a rapid fire question, a rapid fire answer. There is one audience question, Janelle and Ryan, that I really want to get to. We've got 6 minutes, so I think we can do it all. But I want to give our panel one last chance. If you have not asked a second question after your first one, jump on in. I'm not even going to moderate. Quickest to take off your mute button.
I'm jumping in.
I knew it was going to be you.
Quick question. So we've talked about residential. Is there any opportunity for commercial for those looking for affordability in brick and mortar?
Love it. Yes. So in Tucson, we're doing straight residential. But in other cities, we absolutely want to do commercial space. And we think containers are genius for it because it's so affordable to put the building, the business in a container.
So if you think about a commercial building, the majority of it is the open space where you put either tables or whatever the individual business uses, ADA compliant bathrooms, and then a very small portion of it is very business specific. So like the fryers and the grills or the barista stations and the coffee stuff. So if a business, we'd be able to move businesses in and out of the development very quickly. And allow people to start a business at a much lower price point than a traditional long-term lease. And they wouldn't have to worry about the hangover of being liable for a 10-year lease to get into a building because we'd be able to pull the container out and put another tenant in almost immediately. So yeah, it's something that we are very much looking forward to do.
T, I saw you raise your hand, I think.
Well, I was just going to just brief comment on what you were saying, and that if we look at the long-term inaffordability of having people unhoused and what that costs, hands down, this is affordable housing because the health implications, all of those community implications in having someone in a stable house reduces the cost for all of us.
That is a wonderful point. Thank you so much for mentioning that, and we will incorporate that into the conversations that we have. Thank you for that, T.
T, I love it. You know, I just for the big picture of the conversation. You know, I live in a downtown neighborhood that many would say is rapidly gentrifying in terms of there's a lot of either displacement concerns or cultural turnover. But what a lot of people don't know is that the same residents about 15, 20 years ago said very vocally, we don't want any more Section 8 housing. We want nice things, right? We want and these are cultural communities, right? This is, often gentrification has a white tint to it. And this is before that, where many people have said, yeah, we like housing, right? T, we like more housing for people, just not in my backyard. Don't put that near me, but it's a great idea somewhere else. And so not only I think are Janelle and Brian up against the system of markets, I think we're up a system of markets that has institutionalized a NIMBYism that is of deep concern to these social issues. And somehow we've got to break this conversation free to be able to look at how appropriate supply and missing middle housing creates equity and create sustainability in communities. And we're not there yet in Tucson. And it breaks my heart because we could write a different story. And there just needs to be about 100 more Janelles and Ryans to get that done. So appreciate you both so much.
Well, we're having some, Janelle's participated in our equitable housing. It's critical from land use all the way up. And those are some of the issues that they faced. And so thank you. Amazing.
We got your back. Janelle and Ryan. Thank you, T, for that. Okay, 2 minutes before Janelle and Ryan told me we have to move along, but I really thought Mike Peel's question was good. And Mike, I know you wrote it down, but could we just hear your voice and interact with you a little bit? Could you unmute if possible and read your question? And then Janelle and Ryan, if you can efficiently answer.
Sure, thanks. Well, we talked about this to some extent already, but I'd love to hear a quick summary of your long-term sustainability goals related to our climate crisis. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think succinctly, our long-term goal is for sustainability to be built into our residents' lives. We have rainwater harvesting, solar power built into the actual structure of our developments. We're partnering with Rainblocks, which is a local Tucson company, Nerd Power, which is a solar provider outside of Phoenix. Making sure that we are thoughtful and careful with our resources is an absolute priority for us.
Yeah, real quickly, I shared with Mike, but not too long ago, I was visiting my dad and I asked him, I had a can of soda and I asked him where his recycling was. And he said, it doesn't matter, throw it in the trash can. They put it all in the same place anyway. And it struck me as like, that can't possibly be true. And I looked it up and it turns out that in the city of Tucson, yeah, for the last couple of years, maybe that has sort of been true because they shut down the recycling plant. And I thought there has to be the opposite of that. There has to be a way where I can create a building where you have to be green even if you don't want to. The way they put iodine in our salt so that none of us have iodine poisoning and no one notices it. We just have salt. So our approach is to do that with sustainability. So even if you're trying to be wasteful, the building makes your actions sustainable. So we have rain blocks on board. They're all the way up the building so we don't have to use electric pumps to move water from floor to floor. We have a passive cooling system that brings breezes from the top floor, pushes them over the water in the rain blocks, and the residents will be able to vent that as they wish into each unit space, into the outdoor space. We have passive cooling on the interior of the building, so we're doing everything we can to make it easier to be green than not. So we're not asking people to do an extra step to save resources. They have to make an extra step to be wasteful.
Very cool. Mike, thank you. Thank you so much for your question. Well, Janelle and Ryan, it is 6:56, and I know this is kind of when you wanted to bring things to a close. I'll just say thank you one more time to everyone who is here. Janelle and Ryan, thank you so much. I was so excited to get into it that I forgot to introduce myself, even though it was on the invite. So it doesn't matter. But I get the real pleasure of serving a community of 650 young professionals called Tucson Young Professionals, and host a daily radio talk show called Tipping Point. And I think that relates as we close, because I think Tucson's at a tipping point. I think the decisions we make in the next 10 years will shape the next 50. And at TYP, we say that the future requires big ideas and fresh voices. And Janelle and Ryan, you are proud TYP members. We've got many on this call: Dre Thompson, Eric Smith, Aaron Eden, Yvette Marie. We've just about roped in Kanisha. Casey is a TYP member. But you know, to meet this moment, we need fresh voices with big ideas. And just so proud of you, Janelle and Ryan, and thankful for all the support you're getting from the community on the call right now. But there's so many who couldn't be on this call who support you as well. And you are an idea worth spreading. As an ode, Janelle, to your TED Talk experience. You are a TED Talk speaker. So I'll stop there. One final thank you from me, and Janelle, Ryan, back to you.
Thank you all so much for this incredible conversation. Your wisdom and expertise to our panelists. We are so grateful to know you and to be friends with you and to call you colleagues. To the community members who joined us, thank you. Thank you for being here and for caring about the future of our community. As the CEO, I would be remiss if I didn't give one last shout out for our equity crowdfunding raise. If you're unfamiliar with investing in a startup, we are hosting a webinar on Tuesday about WeFunder and how you invest in a startup. We'll have a founder, his name is Sibley. He's actually an investor in Stackhouse, and he'll be launching his own WeFunder raise for his housing project in California. So we'll be sitting down to talk with Carrie, a colleague of Erin's from CIC, on Tuesday. I'll email all of you the link. If you're interested in learning more about investing in our company, please check out this website. It's wefunder.com/stackhouse.tucson. And I'll send you an invite to our webinar on Tuesday. If you're interested, please join us. Thank you for believing in Tucson. Thank you for spending part of your evening with us. Back the stack, and everyone have such a great night. Thank you all.
Bye guys, thank you.